Hare Krishna devotees. So I'm late. Do sincerely apologize for being late. Hare Krishna. Oh my goodness. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatiravanachari 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjan Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjan Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Radha Damodara Radha Damodara Shri Radhe Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna dear devotees. Once again, I'd like to apologize sincerely for being late. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 2, the activities of Maharaj Agnidra. Okay. Text 2. Sacha kadachit pitriloka kama suravara vanitakri dachala dronyam Bhagavantam Vishwasrijam Patim Abhrita Paricharyo Pakarana Atmai Tag Riena Tapaswa Radhyam Pabhuva Sa he King Agnidra Cha also Kadachit once upon a time Pitriloka the Pitriloka planet Kamaha desiring Suravara the great demigods Vanita the woman Akrida place of pastimes Achaladronium, in one valley of the Mandara hill, Bhagavantam, unto the most powerful Lord Brahma, Vishwashrijam, Abrita, having collected Paricharya Upakaranaha, ingredients for worship, Atma of the mind, Eka Agriena, with full attention, Paswi, one who executes austerities, Aradhayam, Aradhayam Bhuva, became engaged in worshipping. Translation: desiring to get a perfect son and become an inhabitant of Pitriloka, Maharaj Agnidra once worshipped Lord Brahma, the master of those in charge of material creation. Went to a valley of Mandara hill, where the damsels of the heavenly planets come down to stroll. There, he collected garden flowers and other necessary paraphernalia, and then engaged in severe austerities and worship. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The king became Pitriloka Kama, or desirous of being transferred to the planet named Pitriloka. Pitriloka is mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Yanti Deva Vrata Devan, Pitrin Yanti Pitri Vrataha. To go to this planet, one needs very good sons who can make offerings to Lord Vishnu and then offer the remnants to their forefathers. The purpose of the Shraddha ceremony is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu, so that after pleasing him, one may offer prasad to one's forefathers, and in this way make them happy. The inhabitants of Pitriloka are generally men of the karma kandya, or fruitive activities category, who have been transferred there because of their pious activities. They can stay there as long as their descendants offer them Vishnu Prasad. Everyone in heavenly planets such as Pitriloka, however, must return to earth after exhausting the effects of these pious acts. As confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9:21, Trine punye martya lokam vishanti. Persons who perform pious acts are transferred to higher planets, but when the effects of their pious acts are over, they are again transferred to earth. Since Maharaj Priyavrata was a great devotee, how could he have begotten a son who desired to be transferred to Pitriloka? Lord Krishna says, Pitrinyanti Pitrivrataha. Persons who desire to go to Pitriloka are transferred there. Similarly, Yanti Mad Yajino Bimam. Persons who desire to be transferred to the spiritual planets, Vaikuntalokas, can also go there. Since Maharaj Agnidra was the son of a Vaishnav, he should have desired to Pitriloka. In answer to this, Goswami Giridhari, Goswami Giridhara, one of the Bhagavatam commentators, remarks that Agnidra was born with Maharaj Priyavrata. Okay. No, excuse me. In answer to this, Goswami Giridhara, one of the Bhagavatam, remarks that Agnidra was born when Maharaj Priyavrata was infatuated by lusty desires. This may be accepted as a fact because sons are begotten with different mentalities according to their time of conception. According to the Vedic system, therefore, before a child is conceived, the Garbhadhana Sanskara is performed. This ceremony molds the mentality of the father in such a way that when he plants his seed in the womb of his wife, he will beget a child whose mind will be completely samskaras, and therefore people have a lusty attitude when they beget children. Especially in this age of Kali, there are no Garbhadhana ceremonies. Everyone enjoys sex with his wife like a cat or dog. Therefore, according to Shastric injunctions, almost all the people of this age belong to the Shudra category. Of course, although Maharaj Agnidra had a desire to be transferred to Pitriloka, this does not mean that his mentality was that of a Sudra. He was a Kshatriya. Maharaj Agnidra desired to be transferred to Pitriloka, and therefore he needed a wife because anyone desiring to be transferred to Pitriloka must leave behind a good son to offer yearly penda or prasad from Lord Vishnu. To have a good son, Maharaj Agnidra wanted a wife from a family of demigods. Therefore, he went to Mandara hill, where the women of the demigods generally come to worship Lord Brahma. In Bhagavad Gita 4:12, it is said, Ankshanta karmanang siddhim yajanta iha devataha. Materialists who want quick results in the material world worship demigods. This is also confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam. Ashwarya Praje Savaha. Those who desire beautiful wives, substantial wealth, and many sons worship the demigods. But an intelligent devotee, instead of being entangled by the happiness of this material world in the form of a beautiful wife, material opulence, and children, desires to be immediately transferred back home, back to Godhead. Thus he worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vishnu. Text again, desiring to get a perfect son and become an inhabitant of Pitriloka, Maharaj Agnidra once worshipped Lord Brahma, the master of those in charge of material creation. He went to a valley of Mandara hill, where the damsels of the heavenly planets come down to stroll. There he collected garden flowers and other necessary paraphernalia, and then engaged in severe austerities and worship. Om Gyana Timarandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshu Unmilitangina Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Vishnu Paraya Krishna Vishtavitale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Dinamini. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharnani Rishesha Shnavati Paschati Adesha Tarni. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So in this verse we are hearing about the mechanism of intergalactic travel, going to different planets of this universe. So Maharaj Agnidra is a son of Maharaj Priyavrata, who was the emperor of the entire universe, as discussed in the previous chapter, for 11 Arbuda, I think it was, 11 Arbuda years, which works out to 1.1 billion years. And so after executing his wonderful activities in ruling the entire universe, establishing cosmic justice, uh, just simply by the twang of his bow, he had leadership succession. And so that leadership succession in the form of his sons, Nidra was given charge of Jambudvip planet, Jambudvip Mandala. So as you know, as described in the previous verses, Maharaj Priyavrata divided the entire universe into different islands with his chariot. So there's Jambudvip, which is in the center. And then there's Plakshadweep. So Dvipa means two oceans, two waters. So basically land that's neighbored by two waters. And so that makes it an island. And so the names of them are Jambudvip, Plakshadweep, Shalmali Dweep, Pushadweep, Ponchadweep, Shakadweep, and Pushkaradweep. So Jambudvipa is in the center, and and so before taking charge of it, the system is actually to accumulate power through tapasya. So Maharaj Agnidra is about to undergo severe austerities on the Mandara hill to accumulate the necessary power so that he can perform his administrative duties. You also heard in the previous chapter how his father also, just simply by her feminine beauty, gestures, her movements, his energy increased every day. And so he was able to perform these uncommon acts. So much so that he got the title of Bhagavan because his administrative power was so extensive. So it appears that he had three other sons, which were mentioned, and they took to the Paramahamsa stage of life. So they were full renunciants. And then the other sons, they took to the administrative duties. And so it appears that he was following in the footsteps of his father to actually get a good wife. So concomitant, so in following the footsteps of his father to get a good wife so that he can have the energy and inspiration and power to actually rule over Jambudvip, he went to Mandara Hill, which is on this planet he's been given rulership over to get a good wife. So why did he go to Mandara Hill? Well, it's described here in the purport that he engaged in the worship of demigods. Now, on this earthly planet, worship of demigods is usually, you create a form of a deity. Um, so if you want to worship Lord Shiva, you have a Shiva lingam, a form of Lord Shiva, and then you establish him in the home, and then you regularly worship him. But his form of worship, as Prabhupada quotes here from the Bhagavad Gita 4:12, Kangshanta Karmanam Siddhim Yajanta Iha Devataha. He wanted a demigod's wife. That was his form of worship. And he actually went where they hang out, which is on Mandara Hill. And so they don't just loosely hang out there, they actually go there to worship Lord Brahma. Um, and so, yes, being in the right place, if you're well positioned, then you can actually achieve to actually be in the right place at the right time so that, so that he can actually get a suitable wife for executing his administrative duties. Mm. So the feature of this verse is you hear about how he's destination conscious. So his desire is actually to go to the planet of the ancestors or the Pitri Loka. And so to actually stay there, the premium that's paid on that planet is that you need a good son who actually offer prasad to Vishnu. So that's quote unquote the tax that needs to be paid. Um, and and as long as your sons, your descendants, pay that tax, then you can stay there. And then if they stop paying, sleep.
Hey, Bo, you're muted, Prabhu.
Aghari Krsna Prabhu, your mic is muted.
Okay, Herbal, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
hearing you now. Thank you.
Hear me now. Okay. So as I was mentioning, the mechanism of transport is through fire. And so most land vehicles are powered by internal combustion engine, and that's a combustion of a fuel. And basically is creating explosions, and so you can have an engine that controls those explosions, and so in this way you can uh, and then it can actually create the propulsive force that's required. More sophisticated engines are like the jet engine, but it also works on propulsion. You can go a lot faster and you can go through greater distances. Now, if you want to travel these great distances across the universe, so here we are hearing the different extent of the universe, or particularly Bhumandala, it's very great. So, like, for example, Jambu Dweep, its radius from the center, um, sorry, it's 100,000 yojanas. Yeah, 100,000 yojanas, which is 800,000 miles. And then the furthest distance, which really is the diameter of the universe, is Alokavarsha, and that's 125 million yojanas. Um, so which is over a billion miles. So you cannot use an internal combustion engine, but you use fire sacrifice. So you worship the Lord Vishnu, creating a fire sacrifice. So there's different types of fire sacrifices. Some are more costly than others, and depending on your resources, the oblations that you offer, you can accumulate a lot of pious credit, and that pious credit actually propels you to different planets in this universe. So there's 14 planetary systems, or mandalas, and one of them is this Loka, where the ancestors actually reside. And so Maharaj Agnidra, he wanted to actually go there. Now, Prabhupada is explaining here, citing a Bhagavatam commentator, Goswami Giridhara. Haribol Prabhu. Haribol. So I have to sit like this because I sprained my ankle. So I can't sit cross-legged, but it's okay. Um, so yeah, so Goswami Giridhara, which Prabhupada is citing here, says that Maharaj Agnidra was conceived by his father when he was in a lusty attitude. And so that's a destination instead of a spiritual destination. Now we can interpolate his brothers, the ones who took to the Paramahamsa stage of life, being Naishtiki brahmacharis all their life, and they really didn't want to take up administrative duties. They were conceived, were performed, and they didn't, and they desired a spiritual destination. So it's a lesson for all of us, that either it can be arranged by the Lord fully, like in the case of Maharaj Anga and Vena, for performing his pastimes. But generally speaking, it's due to the kind of sacrifice that you perform prior to conception, and that actually molds your mentality, and it attracts the soul with similar consciousness. So, so for us practicing devotees, the sacrifice that we perform for actually propelling us to the spiritual world, it's not through just karmic activity. Karmic activity can get you places on this planet. Um, so you can accumulate a lot of money through working long hours. Then if you're really intelligent, you work long hours and you're very precise, then you can accumulate a lot of influence and money. So instead of just being a Sudra, you can actually establish a business. And then in this way, you can establish different vehicles. So a business, if you look at it, really, it has inputs and outputs, and that can actually be a vehicle that takes you or pious activity. And so these pious credits, in other words, you do work on behalf of Janardana. So this is one name of Krishna, maintainer of the living entities. And so when your fruit of activity has entirely, and for these kinds of persons, because the activity itself the sense objects leads to attachment for them. And then from attachment, that further gets crystallized into lust. So more and more attachment and attraction for, that the same nature of those activities. So for persons who are performing fruit of activity, while externally it's nice, what's actually a they achieve their upward mobility from this middle planetary system, the Bhumandala, to high planets, actually outside of the entire universe, to the spiritual world, by performing attracted to non to spiritual subject matter, spiritual object of the devotees. Choppy display. Yeah.
I don't know. As as much as we love to behold your divine form, maybe turning off the video would help. Unless it's just me that's experiencing.
Okay, sorry about that. I think it's like exactly. My God. What is going on? Okay, that's not trying to fix that. Yeah, horrible. Is it still choppy, the display? I saw somebody in the group chat complain.
Yeah, yes, true. I mean, the sound is choppy also.
How to, sorry? The
It's the
sound is
sound.
often cutting out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah, sorry about that. This is okay, let me switch off the camera and see. propulsive force through performing fire sacrifices or sacrifice where the fire itself can either be an actual fire or it can actually be symbolic. So, for example, Krishna, he speaks your mind wants to do something, but you're restraining it. And so, anyone, if you like put your fingers together and you try to like pull your hands apart like that, then you can actually feel, there's some like heat. So, even in the same way, with a fine material object like the mind, that kind of heat is also generated. So this is a stage called pratyahara, or withdrawal of the senses. So the senses wanna, reach out to their sense objects, but the one who is engaged in this kind of sacrifice of mental control, he restrains, and so that restraint creates heat, and so that is their symbolic fire, and so decade after decade, you're restraining your senses uh, from just, wandering, following the regulative principles, no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. Um, you may have a certain education level, but no, you're very determined to serve Radha Damodar year after year. And so that restraint for the purposes of focusing on the mission of your spiritual master creates fire. And so that's the sacrifice that you're performing. So even on the Karma Kanda section as well, working long and failing different schemes as well. It's not that the persons who are very influential, who become like gods among human beings um, currently, that they are, worshipping a demigod at home. Of course, some of them do, but not all of them do for actually accumulating power. But they have performed sacrifices, and so their sacrifice is symbolic. And so for the devotee, they also perform the sacrifice of devotional service. So as we have numerously said, the definition of bhakti is sarvapani vinirmuktam tatparatena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti uchate. So in order to actually serve rishikesha, to engage your senses in the service of the master of the senses, there's two things that are required. One is restraint. So you have to restrain your senses from wandering around material sense objects. And then it requires concentration, which is this dharana. You push them towards the form of the Lord, towards the form of Rishikesh. And so that restraint, that pratyahara, which is built into devotional service, and then this dharana that's built in as well, is where you're pushing them towards the form of the Lord, and His service is actually creating fire, and so that fire actually propels you towards towards the Vaikuntha lokas. My Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Devamrita Swami, gave a nice lecture about on Brihad Bhagavatamrita about how the what's his name again? Gopa Kumar. How he was actually taking a tour of the universe, and he was just thinking about Krishna. And so this section he was speaking about, well, some devotees may take the Brahmajyoti for granted because that's not the destination that we're focusing on. And so they'll just focus on Vrindavan and that section of the spiritual world. But what if it's good to have that focus, but what generally speaking, what is missed out on is the potency of the Brahmajyoti Jyoti, just how powerful it is. Actually, the entire creation, material creation, is actually, and the spiritual world is resting in the Brahma Jyoti. So the Brahma Jyoti has, has a lot of creative potency. And so the way Gopa Kumar propelled himself to different destinations in the material world and through the layers of this universe and through the spiritual world and its different portions and sections, he propelled himself through mantra. Yes, and so this is also our system, and this is a system laid down by Lord Chaitanya. So on Monday we celebrated Purnima, and one of the primary instructions of Lord Chaitanya was to actually chant this Hare Krishna mantra, the Maha mantra. And this is the mantra, it's the great mantra, because it propels you furthest through the entire material and spiritual world. It takes you actually to the quintessential planet, and that is this Goloka Vrindavan. And so through this mantra, it actually can create the strongest form of desire and attraction for the form of the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya, he would quote the Shritash Upanishad, which is a well-known verse, Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nameva Kevalam, Kolo Nasteva Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyata. So this is the Yuga Dharma for this age. And every day we are chanting 16 rounds. So one incentive, there is great incentive for actually chanting Hare Krishna. So if you are approaching Krishna with material desire, the Maha Mantra can propel you the furthest to whatever planet you actually want to. So suppose at the end of this lifetime, your devotional service was mixed, was devotional service in the mode of passion, as Lord Kapila Dev describes. And you're not quite interested to go to the spiritual world. Okay, well, Krishna is actually the best to approach. Chanting Krishna's names is the best. And if you are akama, you are completely free of material desires, and you actually want to go to the spiritual world, then chanting Hare Krishna is also the best thing. Now, of course, we highly recommend that you let go of material desires, but not everybody is able to fully perfect Krishna consciousness. Nevertheless, if you look at the Bhagavatam, the devotees who were mixed with passion and were worshipping the Lord in this mode, they actually got the biggest results. Dhruva Maharaj wanted the greatest kingdom, and he got the pole star. And at the end, he was actually completely purified. And so similarly, we're hearing about another devotee, Maharaj Agnidra, who has mixed desires, and he wants to go to Pitri Loka. And so, yes, and so the best way to actually achieve all this is to propel yourself through mantra. And the greatest mantra is this Hare Krishna mantra. Hare Krishna. Are there any thoughts or comments from the devotees? Personal reflections? Okay, we have Karl Swarup Prabhu. He graced me today with these physical presents. So let me give him. Prabhu.
So you talked about the symbolic fire
Mhm.
of the unadulterated brahmacharya
Mhm.
who sacrifice basically the objects of the senses
In the fire of mental.
mental control.
Yeah.
Of course, the second part of that verse or the next verse
Mm.
is the householders
Right.
who sacrifice the objects of the senses and the fire of the senses.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that symbolic fire
Okay.
as well?
Okay, there was the question is about just don't know the verse number itself. Um you don't, okay. But basically Krishna is saying the unadulterated brahmachari sacrifices the object of the senses in the five mental control, and the householders, the grihastas, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the five of the senses. And so what does this actually look like? So the unadulterated householders are very busy in Krishna consciousness. Sachinandan Maharaj, I think, actually no, it was who's the author of that book on cow protection? Do you know? I think
All my cow protection questions, Aghari.
who wrote the cow protection book, Cow Ethics, Cow Protection in Hindu Animal Ethics. Krishna Kshetra Maharaj. Yes. Okay. So I had a question about the deity worship and how, um, anyway, while answering the question, he mentioned there was one householder in Nepal, and he visited him when he used to travel extensively. And so it's like, like a remote setting like here. And, there was his house. And he was just seeing people coming in, going out, coming in, going out, just like really busy.
Mm.
And basically, everybody who was coming, that was living, his neighbors, um, because his deity worship was to such a high standard, these neighbors, he basically, his personal deities were the deities of the neighbors
Mm.
and the village. And so when you come to the temple, there's prasadam, there's an opportunity to see the form of the Lord, there's an opportunity to offer petals. And so basically, when he sees, okay, what is the standard of household life, where you're actually performing sacrifices every day for the benefit of others,
Mm.
it basically looks like what we're doing now for Radha Damodar. Like, it's quite amazing just how busy we are on the farm. And we're about to execute nice sacrifice, starting on Saturday with students, 3 schools. We're just constantly busy in the Lord's service. And yes, we do have a day off, but you cannot stop but meditate on your service. So even on your day off, you're thinking about, oh, okay, what's my pad up gonna be when I cook lunch? Um, so that's it. So what? So that's basically what it looks like. You have experience of it. Is that from morning until evening, you're chanting, focusing on, the form of the Lord, trying to offer your emotions, your feelings of actually the Lord, wanting to be engaged in His service, and then the Lord grants you an opportunity, and then you engage. So you cook early just so that you can actually come for class. Um, and then afterwards, you obviously got other things to do as well. So it's just day in, day out, uh, you're just busy in devotional service. Yeah. So that's really what it looks like. And even when you have material desires, it's not like all of us are on the pure platform. Like, you don't desire money or you don't desire private property. So those desires may be there. But if you're busy in devotional service, over time, either you just don't have time to act on those desires, um, and then you just give up on them, or they just actually get purified out of you. So in other words, when you think about, okay, let me change my position. I want to move off the farm place. Okay, so what does that entail? And so, you can see it's going to require a lot of sacrifice. And if you do that, you change your position, at the end, you'll be thinking, well, the whole center is I want to keep Radha Damodar in the center. I want to be within, good radius of the temple so that I can regularly offer service to the Lord. So there's been some transformation within you that, oh, yes, now you want to actually, in you wanting to change your occupational position, the center, you still want to keep the form of the Lord, which is Radha Damodar. And so that's in a nutshell those who are offering the sense objects and the fire of the senses. Just very busy, either maintaining cows, maintaining children. But even when you're maintaining children, the deities are there if you are a bona fide grihasta. Okay. Is that okay? All right. Hello. Are there any other? Okay, Kaylee. Herbal.
Hi, Krishna. Thank you for the class. Really nice points, and thank you, Kalsu, for the nice question. Kind of going on that. I mean, when you're talking about like kind of getting lost in this devotional service, like constantly meditating on it, and being so busy, like absorbed in it, I'm just curious because through experience, it seems sometimes I use devotional service as a way to like escape things. So when and I mean it helps purify, but at the same time sometimes there's times where there's no service, or someone gets hurt or something, and then there's no opportunities for at least this physical side of the service. And then sometimes in that state it's like I'm so attached to the service rather than the mentality behind it. And so then the mind can come into play, and then that's when those things, like those whatever things we might have been putting off to the side to do service, can come into play. So I guess how can we try to like best keep it, because sometimes when we're doing in service it's easy to get so absorbed in the service and actually forget the essence behind it. So how do we constantly remember that? Like how can we, like what are some tips that you have or anything like that?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so this is answered by Lord Kapiladev in the third canto, 29th chapter, I think, of the third canto. And he tells his mother, Mother Devahuti, about how devotional service, or how the three modes of material nature mix in to devotional service. So devotional service is pure. The motivation to want to please Krishna, to please his devotees, uh, it's pure. However, you are executing it with facilities and resources that have false ego mixed into it, and false ego is really how not to please the Lord. I'm just going to mute you. How to actually please your own body, your own mind, and your own senses. So the two don't go well together. And so these mixtures, these trace mixtures, trace uh, passion, ignorance, it's there. And the definitions he gave is that devotional service in the mode of goodness is where your self-interest is one with the Lord. So you don't have a separatist mentality that okay, whatever desire I have will actually be achieved through me performing my service. And then when you have a separatist mentality, that's where you're actually distracted from the form of the Lord. And so that's characteristic of passion and ignorance. And so the recommendation is, let us elevate our devotional service to the mode of goodness. And so the mentality that accompanies the mode of devotional service in the mode of goodness is to see that actually all your material desires will be fulfilled by doing devotional service. Then when you're fully convinced by that, then you can come to the Vishuddha Sattva platform, where you are free. You're executing devotional service free of material desires. Anyavilashita shunyam, jnana karma jnana nyavritam, anukulyena krishnanu shilanam bhakti uchete. So this is the definition of unalloyed devotional service, where there's no gyan, no karma mixed into it. It's just pure. You just really just want to please the Lord. Lord Chaitanya and his associates demonstrated this. And so in the wake of Gopurnim, we should be inspired by these devotees and by the Lord himself, how they demonstrated pure devotional service. And the way they actually demonstrated from a particular occupational position, that you as a practitioner, you as a jiva in a material body aspiring for liberation can aspire for. And you can actually see the prayers that they make, where they're at, how they actually manifested this pure devotion. They manifested in a progressive way. And so that's for you as a practitioner to be inspired about. And as you think more about them, then actually, naturally, you just get purified. So it's progressive. So, so that's why it's very important to like read, um, you know, study the shastras so that you can be inspired for to execute pure devotion. Okay, that concludes the class. Thank you. Brother Damodar about to give us the darshan. Rantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gopuramanandi Haribol.